Hello everyone, welcome to the True Paranormal. I think we're now live. Today we're going to be discussing the response to the live stream that Beardo did on the 14th of August 2024. Thank you, by the way, for everyone who has read the articles that I've done on that live stream of Beardo's, and for everyone who is, who's just read it, liked it, shared it, done all of that good stuff. But yeah, this time we're going to be discussing not the actual live stream itself, but the reaction that I've seen. So when I watched the live stream initially, I thought it was very important to cover the live stream. I'm just going to tilt that a little bit more to the side. There we go. Just at the corners of the top there, we're a bit more. There we go. I'll move to the side a little bit. So I thought it was important to cover because when watching it, I never know whether or not to cover something until I've watched a good way through. So in the case of this live stream, I was watching it and I was like, oh, it's an interesting title, interesting topic, and I listened to it and I was like, oh yeah, the conversation is really good. So that's why I thought, I don't want this to get lost. I want to document it in a number of different articles to make the conversation as easy as possible to rediscover as such, because you don't want it to be lost amongst all the videos on YouTube, all the live streams that Beardo does, all the videos that Beardo does. And as I've said, I think in some of the articles, YouTube, it's not going to recommend a 3-hour long live stream to you, so there's minimal chance of discoverability beyond the initial live stream date, which is why I felt to do those articles. But following those following the live stream, when I was deciding to do the articles, I saw a couple of interesting things come from the live stream. So firstly, because I do follow a number of paranormal related things on Facebook and on YouTube. YouTube I tend not to see too much on, but Facebook I do. And I always keep an eye out for these things, just in case there's anything in particular to write an article about, any groups that, I'm keeping an eye on, because I do want to do an article on them in the future. Sorry, by the way, if I do have to cough every now and then. I'm still not 100% over this cold, so my voice may eventually go. Hopefully that'll be fine throughout this stream. But yeah, so one of the groups that I follow is Dead Cold, which I've not properly looked into him. I've not watched his content. I do need to watch a live stream that he did with Don't Scare Claire. But that is not so much to see Dead Cold's channel, it's to do research on Don't Scare Claire. It's an interview with her, and I do want to do an article on her, but I'll also do an article on Dead Cold at some point. But I saw on Facebook, following Beardo's live stream, that on the 14th of August, so the same day as Beardo's live stream, he released a statement, which read as, "Watching Beardo's livestream panel debate show with all guests worth listening to and taking on board their comments is yet again making me think I need to change what I do and how I approach an investigation. I'm being honest here, unfortunately, folks. What I do on my channel is entertainment. It may be honest entertainment, some might say interesting and informative, but it's still just that. I've been struggling with all things YouTube paranormal for all this year, and it's not what I want for the foreseeable future. When the chance arises, I prefer to take nothing, no equipment, no cameras, nothing. If I'm going to continue my journey within this so-called paranormal world, I'd like a personal experience without me constantly thinking, ooh, I need that camera shot, let me get more B-roll, let me get set up here because it looks good, I must go to this location because loads of people say it's haunted, I might as well be a short filmmaker. So I've decided for the time being, and that might be a long time, I'm not making any more paranormal investigation videos. I'm still making other videos regarding history and folklore that may have ghosts mentioned in it. I feel I need to step away from YouTube-style paranormal videos, as if I don't, it'll put me off for good. Watch this space, folks, as things will change on my channel. I totally understand if you leave, but I need to go away for a while and think about what I'd like to do. I may do a live stream soon once I've had time to think. Lots of love, folks, and enjoy your summer. By the way, click this link below for a good slice of honesty within the paranormal world." And then he links Beardo's live stream. So I read that and I was like, that's a very, very, very interesting statement to come out off the back of Beardo's live stream. Now, Dead Cold was not involved in the live stream. He may have commented on it. I cannot remember. I think there might have been a comment or two that I mentioned in the articles, but again, I can't remember properly. But he makes interesting points regarding being a short filmmaker, and it's very good to see that off the back of the live stream, he's not only just reflected on what he's doing and what other people are doing, but he's actually said, you know what, I'm going to step away from the investigation videos because of what I've heard people discuss in that live stream. And it's given him that reflection of he may as well be a short filmmaker because he's more focused on the particular, the behind the scenes, the camera angle stuff, making the footage look entertaining for the viewer as opposed to contributing to the paranormal research side of things. And that, I think, is the big difference between, are you doing it for investigation purposes, or are you doing it because for entertainment purposes, or are you doing it for investigation purposes? Because if you're doing it for entertainment, you're concerned about views, subscribers, you're basically running it as a business. Whereas if you, a short film company would, or if you're doing it because of the investigation purposes, you're not doing it for those reasons, and the views, the subscribers, that shouldn't be a concern to you. Your concern should be what you've caught. It should be, it should be trying to do it in a legitimate way. It should be trying to portray the investigation as best as possible, not in terms of does this camera shot look good, but does this camera shot capture everything it needs to capture? Emphasis on the word needs there. So, for instance, I saw someone share footage of a bottle rocking, which I may have discussed in the last live stream. I had some water in it, and I've seen people comment on it saying, oh, it's just moving because of the water inside and things. But this footage, they said, is this paranormal? I don't think they said it was paranormal, but they questioned it, and they were like, oh, there's no drafts or anything like that, and their footage, it showed this bottle, and they zoom in on the bottle after a little bit in the footage. So I commented on it saying you don't need to zoom in. Instead, what you should have done is you should have zoomed out, because that footage doesn't tell me if there's someone off camera in the initial bit before you zoom in that could be wafting some paper or something at this bottle to make it move. It doesn't show the ceiling if there is a ventilation thing up there. It doesn't show what doors there are in this location. It doesn't show, like I say, where everybody is. So there's a number of factors that could have caused the bottle to move. Now, granted, if you're there in the moment, you can say, oh, well, I know that there was only one door and it's on the camera. I know that there's only myself filming it. I know that there's no ventilation. But that is beside the point, because if you're showing footage, you need to not only show all of... You need to not go off of, but I know. You need to go, well, how do I show this to everybody else? And that's something that I kind of learned from Kieran O'Keefe when watching Most Haunted. Because as dodgy as Most Haunted could be, Kieran O'Keefe did always say good things on it. And one of the things that he would say is, basically zoom out, he would say you need to try and capture as much as possible in the footage, so that then you are showing as much as possible for the viewer. You need to, if there are questions, the footage needs to answer them for the viewer. Otherwise, the viewer's going to go, well, that's not paranormal. And if the viewer can say, well, that's not paranormal because of this, you need your footage to have countered that argument. If not, then the footage is rendered void, basically. And that's the difference between a short filmmaker and a paranormal investigator. A short filmmaker will not be fussed about answering all the questions. The short filmmaker will be like, oh, this looks really dramatic and creepy and cool, and look at this. They're going to be more concerned about, can I see strings, if you're faking the activity, as opposed to, am I answering all these questions? Whereas an investigator, they will be concerned about, right, what questions will people have if I capture such a thing on camera? For instance, a door slam. They're going to be like, right, if a door slams, what do I need to capture on the camera? 1, you need the door slamming. 2, you need some sort of footage capturing both sides of that door, so you know no one's slamming out on either side. 3, you need some sort of footage of the hallway or the room or whatever, just so you know that there's no potential drafts. You need good audio equipment as well, just in case you can capture a whistle or something like that at the same time, because if you can, that way you can say, well, maybe there was a draft because I can hear this whistle at the same time that the door goes, which is the wind rushing through. So if you're a paranormal investigator, you need to be concerned about those things, and they're the things you need to prioritize in your footage instead of the does it look cool and spooky and entertaining side. And it's good that Dead Cold, he's called Mark, but it's good that he looked at his own work and looked at Beardo's live stream, that he recognised that he's more so doing it from the angle of a short filmmaker, and that if he and that, you know, given he wants a paranormal experience of his own, that he'd much rather, and he acknowledges he'd much rather take no equipment and no cameras, and he just would like a personal experience of his own, kind of without having to think about all these questions and thinking about, oh, what are people going to think of this footage, etc. So it's good that he looked at that and that he reflected, and it's also good that it was Beardo's live stream that prompted him to reflect. I mean, it sounds like he was already reflecting, with him saying that he's had all sorts of problems with the YouTube paranormal stuff through the year. And bear in mind, this is the 14th of August that he made this statement, so about half the year had passed at this point. But it seems like it's this particular, the live stream, that prompted him to stop with the investigating, and instead he has decided to focus more on the folklore side of things, which I think is incredibly important as well, because I've always said there are 3/4 stages to paranormal investigation. You've got research, you've got the investigation, and then the 3rd/4th part, it's analysis/debunking. I say 3/4 because there is overlap between analysis and debunking. So I think that if you are to analyse, you would also have to debunk, but if you are debunking, you don't necessarily have to also analyse, or at least not in the entirety. So obviously the research part, it's what I do primarily on the database, so that is looking up locations, spirit types, investigators, the overall history of the paranormal, knowing kind of how equipment works, what equipment there is to use, all of these things, like you said, like folklore as well. Then the investigation is when you've got the equipment, or no equipment if you prefer, and you go out to a location that you believe you may get activity at. You take a camera, you film it, you use audio equipment, visual equipment, etc., and you capture the best footage you can of a paranormal investigation. Now, that isn't best in terms of entertaining, that's best as in ruling out explanations if anything happens. Then you've got the analysis and debunking side. Now, the analysis and debunking, the debunking is looking through the footage, and if anything is flagged, as it were, so if there is a noise that you can't explain or a visual you can't explain, you would debunk it. You'd be like, well, what is causing this shadow? What's causing this voice? What's doing that stuff? So that's the debunking, which in a way is a form of analysis, because you've still got to look through the footage or the audio to actually pick that out, which is why I say that there's overlap between the two. But then you've got the analysis, which is, in my case, so I use the Spirit Talker app when I investigate, and I know that that's a controversial app, that a number of people don't think it's real, etc. But I think there's potential with that app because it records the words and it records the time each word was spoken. So in context for me, if I was doing an investigation, the analysis side is looking at those word lists and it's looking at the time gaps between each word and working out if there's any sort of pattern overall throughout the word. So how many kind of positive connotation words were said, how many negative connotation words were said, how many names were said, how many dates were said, are there any repetitions of words, how often have those words been repeated, and all the numeric side. It's basically taking an investigation and turning it into numbers, which you could do as well outside of word lists. You could look through a video and you could say, I heard a bang 4 times, I heard footsteps twice, I heard a whistle once, and you could then compare that to other investigations at that location, and you could tally up how much activity you've had in total there, again comparing it between each time you've been there, seeing if there's any consistencies, any deviations, and then comparing those numbers to the numbers of other locations, again seeing if there's any consistencies, if there's any spikes, any dips. The analysis, it's trying to make numbers out of activity. which is something that I don't see people do often, but I think that that's how you will prove or disprove the paranormal, because if it's consistent across all locations, then it's just the same. That's just nothing in particular is happening, especially if you go to a location which is not said to be haunted and you get the same data, then it's just the same everywhere, and there's no particularly haunted location, there's no particularly not haunted location, as long as it maintains steady. Otherwise, if you get spikes, they're places of interest where you need to go back to those places and see if the data remains consistent. And that's how I believe the paranormal will be proven or disproven. But anyway, off of that tangent, Mr. Gray then did a response. So he did a response which was uploaded on the 19th of August 2024, so a number of days after Beardo. And Dead Cold did their, the live stream and the statement. And Mr. Gray was prompted by both the statement and Beardo's live stream, it seems, to do this response. So if you don't know, his channel is World of Mr. Gray. He did definitely comment during Beardo's live stream. He has 21.6 thousand subscribers. His video, which he did on this topic, was 17 minutes long, well, a little over 17 minutes long. And the title of it was Time for a Change / Are You Investigating the Paranormal for Entertainment Purposes or Science? And so he starts off his video, he says that Beardo's live stream was very good and he very much enjoyed it. And he goes on to say he himself is an open skeptic and has been for a long time. And he believes in the laws of physics, the scientific method of testing and observation, but he's not a scientist. He puts a lot of emphasis on that. He's open to the possibility of anything, whether right or wrong. And he's not debunking the paranormal, he's debunking stupid fake videos on YouTube which people think are real. And this was a point touched on in Beardo's live stream, where Beardo says he isn't debunking the paranormal, he's debunking the fake channels on YouTube, which, yeah, pretty much. To debunk the paranormal is a tough thing, but to debunk the paranormal, you need to say that you're skeptical, you need to say that you don't believe it, and you need to, you need to look at different, I've lost my train of thought now. But yeah, you need to just go at it from a negative perspective. Like Kieran O'Keefe, for instance. He will always look at the paranormal and he'll always find an explanation for it. And he'll always find an explanation that is not paranormal related. But with Beardo, he doesn't do that. He looks at the fake teams on YouTube and he debunks particular things he sees in those videos. And he doesn't say that those bits of fakery mean that the paranormal's fake. He thinks that the fact that they're faking, it doesn't mean the paranormal in total is fake, but it means that the team is fake. And he does make sure to say that. But yeah, so Mr. Grail says he's been doing it for the last 5.5 years. And he then makes a couple of observations. So he says that to an outsider, not in the community, if you see two videos by someone you know is fake, so one video by someone you know is fake and another by someone who you know is real and honest, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference between the two videos, as regardless if it's fake or real, all the same methods are used in the investigation. And the same, because the same methods are said in the investigation, and the same things are said and they're called out, and the same equipment is used. And he believes that you shouldn't use equipment. And just for a quick moment, going back to the observation, I absolutely agree with that. I think that if you looked at a fake video and you looked at a legitimate video, you would not be able to tell the difference. It's why teams like the Overnight channel, to me, I'm just like, I don't know if it's real or not, because I am not brilliant at pointing out debunking. I've learned a bit more from watching Beardo's videos, but from looking at the Overnight channel, they seem legitimate. I know that Beardo's called them out a couple of times, but they're always with someone when he's called them out, which is why I'm on the fence with them. But because they start off with all the dramatic introduction, They're laughing, they're joking, they have the same equipment, cat balls, REM pods, K2 meters. You can't tell. You can't tell if they're real or not because someone such as Twin Paranormal, they will use all of that same stuff. And Twin Paranormal is someone that Beardo has called out a number of times. Again, I've not seen their videos, so I can't say if they're fake or not. I just know Beardo's called them out. But yeah, you look at it and you're like, it's all the same. You can't tell at all. And the only difference, the only way you can tell is if you stick with it and nothing happens. If nothing happens, they're probably legitimate. If something happens and there's lots of screaming, etc. But even then, the screaming, it's not an indication to it being faked. It's just an indication that they overreact. Which is, again, it's why I'm on the fence with certain things like Most Haunted. Because even though I do think Carl and Stuart do fake things, I don't know about the rest of the team. Because even though Yvette might scream her head off, I don't know if she's in on the fakery as such. I mean, she might know that Carl fakes things, but she herself might not fake things. And so if a noise does happen, or a voice happens, or something like that, and she screams, that could be genuine. But it's hard to tell, because you know that other team members may fake things at any moment, and it's just a muddy thing. But yeah, so Mr. Gray says that he believes that you shouldn't use equipment, which is absolutely fair enough in it to a degree. I know some people don't like using equipment. Personally, I would always use equipment. I don't know how you'd prove something that is invisible if you don't have equipment. At the very least, you need audio and video recording equipment. You need a camera. You need something to record the sound as well. Because otherwise, it's just living in your memory, and that's not proof. So, but in terms of, I mean, I assume he's referring specifically to REM pods, K2 meters, cat balls, etc. I've always maintained, independently, these bits of equipment are useless. I would not use them just by themselves. You always need something to back up the equipment. Because if you think about it, if you had a thermometer, right? The thermometer backs up you. You are the equipment. You're the one who's saying, oh, I think it's cold. You look at the thermometer. Yes, it is cold. You wouldn't go in an investigation looking at this, because people do use thermometers and whatnot to measure the temperature. You wouldn't go around the investigation and go, oh, hang on, this is saying there's a cold spot here. You'd first feel it, and then you'd look at it to back you up. You wouldn't back up that, because psychologically, if you look at the thermometer, yes, of course, if that's saying it's cold, you're going to think it's cold. So you need something to back up something. Humans cannot detect EMF, therefore they cannot back up, you can't use an EMF detector to back up a human. You need something to back that up, whether it be a second EMF detector or something else of the equivalent. Which is why, when it comes to the cat balls, by themselves, yes, they are cat toys. By themselves, yes, there can be random things setting them off. The ball bearing inside could just spontaneously fall. You might have a bug land on it, but this is why I use it in conjunction with the Spirit Talk app. Because yes, the Spirit Talk app by itself is a random word generator. It just throws out random words, they don't necessarily mean anything. But if you use them in conjunction, the Spirit Talker app, if that says something to do with being touched or lights, at the same time the cat ball lights up, then I deem it significant, especially if it happens on numerous occasions. And that's where the analysis comes in, because you'd look at the footage and you'd say, well, how many times did that say about lighting up or the balls or anything like that? How many times did that say words relating to this, the cat balls at the same time the cat balls lit up? And how many times did it say something relating to the cat balls when the cat balls did not light up? And you see if there's a majority and if there's a pattern. And that's the interesting part. So I agree and disagree. I get why people say that you shouldn't use equipment, and I absolutely think, though, that you should use equipment just to back yourself up a little, and to back up your own senses, because you can't trust what you experience, especially not if you're in a known to be haunted location in the dark as such. So he then explains he thinks that the fake is damaging the real, as you can't tell the difference between the fake and the real, which I agree with. I do think that it is all very similar, aside from the real paranormal tends to have less activity, and they tend to be more level-headed. Whereas if it's fake, it tends to be a bit more over the top, and you tend to have things happening quite constantly, or at least they make it seem like things are happening quite constantly. But going back to the influences on the Real, because of the short filmmaker things, they may feel pressured to try and make it seem like many things are happening. They may want to try and make it entertaining, and so the real investigators may start screaming and shouting because that's more entertaining for the viewer. It doesn't mean that they're faking it. I mean, obviously they're potentially faking their own responses, but it doesn't mean that they're faking activity. And yeah, Mr. Gray says he's specifically talking about YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook, just the various social media platforms. Although, to be fair, with the places he lists, I don't quite know where he's not on about, because that's pretty much every platform that you can upload a video to. So, I don't know. But he says that if you didn't know any better and took videos from different channels, they look the same, all have night vision, all have Ovilus equipment, all have EMF readers, all have SLS cameras, all have the SD's method. And regardless of fake or real, all of them do the same, and it's the reason why the fake is damaging the real. And to an extent I agree, to an extent I disagree. I don't think using all of that is why the fake's damaging the real. I think that, again, the equipment, I always maintain this view as well. Equipment is still technology. I mean, he argues that later on that no one has said that a K2 meter can detect a ghost, but no one has said that it can't detect a ghost. People have just said this might detect high levels of EMF, and as a result, people have gone out and they've thought, oh, high levels of, that's energy. Maybe that's where a spirit is. Now, personally, I believe that we are all spirits within a body. You cannot detect a human being with a K2 meter. That's a big flaw, I think, in the argument there. Which, you know, if you're using equipment to detect a ghost, and if it's believed that the spirit is within the body, then you should be able to design equipment to detect a human being. And not in regards to radar that detects a physical object. I mean more so in regards to, like a K2 meter, you could point it to someone and the lights will flicker because there's a human there. Someone needs to create equipment to detect that. If you can detect that, then you can detect the spirit, and if you can detect the spirit, and by the way, that means it has to work on living people and not dead people. That's, I think, the big distinction there. I think if you're to create an accurate K2 meter, it needs to detect a human being and it needs to not detect a dead person. It needs to detect some sort of energy reading that a human being is exerting when living. That is, I think, the challenge to scientists, that they need to do that. And if they cannot do that, it might be because we don't have the technology yet. If they can do that, that's how you prove the existence of a spirit, I would say. And it's just come to me now. But again, it shows why equipment can be useful. It's like, I think plasma balls could be useful because it puts energy out into the atmosphere for spirits to potentially use. So, yeah, I think that you do need to use equipment. So I disagree with his stance on that. But anyway, so he says the other problem is... Oh, and I think it's not quite right to argue that you look like a fake channel because you're using equipment. Perhaps it's the fake channels that look like the real ones because they're using equipment. It works both ways, that argument, which is why I disagree with his argument. So I don't think it's the fake damaging the real because of that. I think that there's blur between it, and so it heightens expectations if you do watch a fake channel. And because of those expectations, you'll click on a real channel who's still using the equipment, etc., but nothing is happening. And then you'll click off and back onto the other ones. So the other problem, he says, is YouTube thrives on sensationalism and negativity. Negative videos get most views and the most traction. It's why drama sells, people get excited over it, and it's why people look at the newspaper. I do agree with him there. I do think that negativity does sell. It's why whenever you click on the news or watch the news or read a newspaper, as he says, it's always just negativity that they're spinning, because that's what people want to see, even though they don't want to see it. They're intrigued by it. So I do agree that if someone's shouting and screaming about demons, you're more likely to go, ooh, or like, if they say that someone nearly died, or if they got attacked or scratched or whatever, people, for some twisted reason, want to see that, or are intrigued to learn more about that. It's very weird. But it's like people's obsessions with serial killers and true crime and all of that lot. It's all very just morbid. It's very strange. I've never understood people's obsession, but it's why all of that stuff does well. But yeah, so fake channels fake channels get more viewers, more traction and audience than honest, legit ones, because they're shouting and screaming, and so it's more exciting. I do agree with that. I remember when I was younger, when watching Most Haunted, my dad in particular would absolutely love Most Haunted because of Yvette screaming and her reactions to things and Derek's possessions. It would all be extremely funny. I remember my dad really laughing a lot at all of that. And it was very funny, and that's probably a reason why people watch Most Haunted, because not only was it kind of, it was talking about ghosts in a time period where people weren't really talking about ghosts, and it was claiming to be a legitimate investigation, but you also had the entertainment value of the shouting, of the screaming, of people getting scared and running away, and of Derek getting possessed and shouting nonsense, and it was all very entertaining. But I would argue people watched it more so due to the entertainment factor than the paranormal factor. I don't think anyone was like, oh, look, they caught a noise. I think they were more like, oh, did you see Yvette run away? Wasn't it funny? I could be wrong there. I was very young at the time, but that's the impression of the memory I have of that time. So from an outsider, shouting, screaming, running away is more entertaining than chatting into the wind for 8 hours a day, which I agree. Or calling into the wind, I think he actually said, for 8 hours a day, which I do agree. As I've said, I've uploaded videos to YouTube, which is just me investigating in this room. They don't get views because it's just me sat by myself in night vision, not really doing a great deal and just chatting nonsense for a bit. And so he also says it doesn't help that real channels use the same methods as the fake channels, and it's what they've been told works, and I agree there. And I'll get onto that in a little bit of time, because I do think that a lot of real channels use certain bits of equipment, use certain methods, not necessarily because they have thought into it and think, oh, this might work, but rather because they've seen others do it, and so are like, oh, those investigators are doing it, I'll do it. And a good example is me with not only night vision, which I will get onto later, but with the light up bear and the cat balls. Now with these ones, I didn't get those bits of equipment because I thought they'd work. I got them because I thought they didn't work, because I saw the Ghost of Britain team using them, and they were the first team that I saw do a more grounded investigation, a more real-looking investigation. And they had the cat ball and the cat balls, and they had the bear. And I don't think I'd know about the bear if it wasn't for that team. I would know about cat balls by now if aside from that team, but they promoted it a lot with the cat ball thing, and they highly recommended it. But I watched their footage and I saw the cat balls lighting up, and I saw the bear on occasion fall. And I said to myself, I didn't know how it fell on a couple of occasions. And I was like, because they seem real, but the bear's fallen and the cat balls are lighting up. But there's a lot I didn't know from the footage, such as sensitivity of them, such as if the bear was kind of top heavy or anything like that, if it could easily fall. And if it could fall easily, which way it would fall easily, if it would fall forwards or backwards. So I decided to get those bits of equipment for myself to test them. That way, by watching the footage, I would be able to either replicate at home or try to replicate at home, or I would be able to watch it and be like, no, I know that bear, it doesn't behave like that. They've either faked it or it's legitimate. And it just left me in a more certain mindset about it. So that's why I got those. Not because I thought they were real and legitimate, etc., but to test them out for myself. And that's why I've kept using them in investigations, because each time I use them, because I don't know for sure, so each use is testing it. And it's through testing it, I'm more on the side of they could be legitimate than the other way. And I know that some people think they're absolute nonsense and that there are technological reasons why they light up, etc. But I've had mixed results. I've had results where I've easily been able to go, okay, that's lit up because of this reason. For instance, I've determined that there's a settling period with them where if it lights up within about 5 minutes of the investigation, it could very well be that metal ball bearing inside it, gravity doing its thing, and it would cause it to light up. But after that point, I've determined it very unlikely for it to light up again. So if it does light up again, especially consistently, I'm so sorry, my voice is starting to fail me. Then I know to question it and to be like, hang on a minute, that seems a bit weird. Let's do another experiment with it. And I know that they can be sensitive. For instance, I had them on a set of drawers, I think it was, at one point, and my uncle kept walking past. And every time he walked past, the cat ball lit up. The first time it lit up, I was like, oh, that's interesting. And everyone in the room was like, hang on a minute, why is that lit up? And then he walked past again, it lit up again, and everyone else was like, why is it lit up again? Daniel, what's happening? And then he walked past again, and it was that where I was like, yeah, it's him walking past. And I went over to it, kind of walked past myself, and I was like, it's walking past, that the vibrations from the floor are travelling through the drawers, they're lighting up the cat ball, which taught me how sensitive it could be. So then watching videos with other people with cat balls on the floor, if they're stood nearby, it could very well be them that's lit it up without realising. It's like I've seen a video recently where someone was sitting on the floor, cat ball off to the side, looked like it was a good distance away, mind, but the person kind of moved backwards, not towards the cat balls, but parallel, and then the cat ball lit up pretty much immediately. And in the video, they all freaked out and were like, oh my god, it's the cat ball, cat balls have all just lit up. And I did leave a comment on that video, because certain things like that, I need to comment on it, saying, no, look, the person in the video, they moved back, the cat ball lit up straight away, it's because the vibrations have travelled through the floor, hit the cat ball, that's why it's lit up. But I wouldn't know any of this if I didn't have that equipment. I hadn't tested it repeatedly. So I do think that using the same methods as the fake channels is something you need to do, because you are testing it. And if anything, like I say, the argument can be flipped. Maybe the fake channels are using the same tools, the same methods as the legitimate channels. It works both ways. So I agree and I disagree, because it works both ways. I agree with the way he's arguing it, but there is a counter argument by saying it goes both ways. And again, if the foundation is fake channels, then is there anything that is real? You know, I've questioned that a few times. Most Haunted in certain locations that have said to be haunted. You know, if it all dates back to Most Haunted or Ghost Adventures, then if the foundation of the paranormal is insecure and built on fakery, you could argue the spiritualism movement. Even with that, then does the whole tower crumble, or is it they just got stuff wrong about a concept, and we are since trying to adjust to make it right? It's one of them. I'm like, I don't know. But it's an interesting thing to discuss and to debate. So he then says about the scientific method, which is to test something over and over, and if it doesn't work, then you try something else. And if the same methods have been used over again and they're getting no results, then it's time to try something else. And he said that's how you get out of looking like the fake channels. Now, I do agree with that statement, that the fake channels will likely keep using the same equipment, etc., because it's what has been working for them. Whereas if you're genuinely invested in the paranormal and want to try and figure it out, you will try to change things up here and there. Now, again, that doesn't mean if you've changed stuff up, it doesn't mean that you're a legitimate team or channel. It just means that you're trying something new. And I think that the real ones should all be trying to do something new. Like I say, with the invention of, like, you could try and invent a device that detects a human being but not a dead body kind of thing. That is the most accurate form of EMF meter, I believe, because it is commonly believed that humans are just spirits within a body. So you should be able to, even if you're going off of the idea of aura and things, you should be able to create a device. If the spirit is energy, you should be able to create a device that can detect that energy, or the aura or whatever. And that's how you would get the accurate reading. And again, you should have higher things around a living person, but not around a dead one. And that is something I think someone needs to try and figure out. And if they can't figure it out, like I say, we either don't have the technology yet, or it's a case of the spirit doesn't exist. It's one of those two things. And if the spirit doesn't exist, then that puts big question marks over the paranormal. Because then what is a ghost? And it leads to the answer of, it's psychological. So, I think that it could be a way of getting out of the looking like a fake channel, but also, he's saying that as far as he knows, it's got no results, and you need to test something over and over. And I would argue that using the same equipment is testing it over and over, because at what point is that testing period enough? I would argue quite soon. I think it took just a few investigations for me to actually get a good bearing around the cat ball and the bear in terms of if they were successful or not. But I'm still left with question marks. And this is the same for the Spirit Talk app. I tested it. I'm still left with question marks. Therefore, because I don't know the answer yet, I need to keep using it, to keep getting data, to keep analysing and keep trying to figure it out. Because I don't think the testing period should end until you know. So yeah, and I think that's why people use the same equipment, because they might not know. They may have had good results. But if you have had no results at all, it's like the REM pod, for instance. I have a REM pod. I used it twice, and straight away I knew it was going to be a hassle, because I knew there was too much going on in the room, as it were. Technology-wise. So I was getting inconsistent data. It wasn't really giving me any data that I could use. So straight away, I've not used it since. Same really for the plasma ball and the K2 meter. So, but anything with a question mark, you should persist with until you don't know, or until you do know rather. So he says that EMF, Ovulus, SLS, they've all been used over the years with pretty much no results coming back as far as he's aware. And he says that he doesn't class the knock as evidence because it can be caused by many things, and I do agree with that. Although I do think that some knocks are unexplained. He says the EMF lights are not evidence either, as they are detecting electromagnetic frequencies. No one said that's how you find ghosts, yet someone decided to try it and now it's taken as a fact. Again, this is one I half agree, half disagree. Yes, it is detecting electromagnetic frequencies, but if there's no reason for it to detect electromagnetic frequencies, then you can take it as evidence. That's my stance. No one said it's how you find ghosts. People have just, someone said it at one point and people have taken it as fact, but it's one where I agree, because I agree regarding that, but I disagree with it not necessarily being evidence. I think that it can maybe be evidence. It depends very much on the situation, because if you detect an EMF, but you're in the middle of a field, no technology for miles, that's surely evidence, right? Or you've got to figure out some sort of reason for it. So to be fair, EMF meters I would take on a rural investigation. I wouldn't use it in a house. I wouldn't use it where there's cables and power lines and Wi-Fi and things. I would go to a remote location with no technology aside from the equipment that I've brought, and I would use the EMF meter. And if it does spike to anything, if I'm not near a camera, etc., and it does spike, then I'll be like, ooh, that's interesting. And again, I wouldn't say it's ghost, I'd just say it's interesting. Because that's all you should really do in investigation. You should just say it's interesting as opposed to jumping to the ghost conclusion. Now, of course, if there's no particular explanation that you can think of, you can say it's paranormal, because that's what paranormal is, but it doesn't necessarily mean ghost. So Mr. Gray then says to try different things, and that the Estes method is something different, although it is just someone repeating a spirit box, headphones on, blindfold, which I agree, and that's a very subjective thing. And again, from the footage, you don't know if they can't hear you. So there are things you don't know from the footage, so they may be able to hear you, they may not, who knows. But what they hear and what they're saying, the spirit box is very subjective. So for all you know, the spirit box may have said what you would class as the right answer to a question, but the person has heard something different, and so they've then said the wrong answer. It's a very subjective method, which I don't like. I think it's a creative idea, right? It's something where I've seen what could be interesting results from it, but I think it's too subjective. You need to remove the subjectivity from an investigation, I think. And he said that the majority of techniques were brought up by someone called Bill Chappell, who was a technician for Ghost Adventures in the early days. He said they went to him and he gave them gadgets to test. And then it was said in the beginning of earlier episodes that they were testing new equipment, but people are still using it 20 years later with no evidence, as far as he's aware, as a result. And so he believes it's time to change what equipment's being used. Which again, I do think there needs to be a change in equipment, but some equipment I think can give out interesting things. But again, this goes back to the question I said earlier of is if the foundation is unstable because all the equipment dates back to Ghost Adventures, does that mean all equipment is just dodgy? Possibly. And then he says about night vision, that the only reason people use it is because it makes things seem creepy, and it was popularised by Most Haunted. And I agree here. I do absolutely agree. Aside from one small technicality, I do disagree on a little bit. But in terms of, and this relates to the conversation earlier about people using it because they've been told that this is what works. There was a live stream I did a while back where I had two cameras going. I had a tablet going and I had a camera going. The camera was recording in night vision. The tablet that I was using was recording just normally as a live stream to Facebook. And the reason I did this was because I would then have live stream footage, night vision footage, which if people questioned it could be overlapped, and then I could say, look, there's no editing, this is done live. Look, here's the live footage, here's the night vision footage. But it meant that because I did it in the dark, you could only see on the night vision footage on the camera that was recording what I was doing. So people watching the live stream were very confused because it was just dark for them because the tablet couldn't go night vision. And so they're like, oh, why are you using night vision? Why are you doing it in the dark? And I stopped. And when I was questioned about it, I straight away was like, I don't actually know why I'm doing it in night vision. But then the more I thought about it, the more I thought, it's because I've seen Most Haunted do it in night vision. And so I've taken that as, this is how you investigate. And so, yeah, it was popularised by Most Haunted. But having put more thought into it, I do think that there's another reason why people do night vision. And I think it tags on to the making things creepy. And this is where I kind of agree but slightly disagree with him, because I think that there is more of a reason to it than just to make it creepy. And I think it's the same as the Ouija board rules. So a Ouija board, if you have never used one before, it has a certain set of rules that you're supposed to abide by. So these are not playing alone, not taking your hands off the planchette, always saying goodbye, things like that, which are just nonsense as far as I'm aware. I've done many a solo Ouija board investigation and broken every single rule, and nothing's happened. Nothing has knowingly happened, at least. The planchette hasn't moved. I've called out to all sorts. The planchette hasn't moved. I've not experienced anything. I've not been harmed. Yet, but you can't attribute chance occurrences to something that happened ages ago. That makes no sense, and it's superstitious. Um, so I believe night vision is akin to these rules, because with the rules, there's a thing called the ideomotor effect, where your brain will subconsciously move the planchette. So the never playing alone rule in particular, I believe, is there to not only make it spookier as such, and not only to make it a family game, but it is to heighten the activity. It's to get you raving about this board, getting other people to buy it. Because to get other people to buy it, you need to create this mythos around it. You need to get people to think it works. No point in buying just a wooden board if it don't work, you know? So, if you play with multiple people, you don't know for sure if you're the one who's moved the planchette. And this is something I found when doing it by myself, because I'll be sitting there with my hand on the planchette for ages, and then it'll move a teensy bit, tiny bit, and then I'll be like, ooh, this is interesting. But then I will think, hang on a minute, was it myself? And so I'll kind of reset it, and then I'll see, and I'll relax my arm a little bit, and then it'll move a little bit again, and I'll be able to replicate it because I'm by myself. Otherwise, you've got different factors at play, and what I realised is that over time, my arm was subtly relaxing without me noticing, and that moved the planchette. Now, if that was to happen with a group of people, then what you would find happen is everyone would freak out. They'll detect a small movement and they'll all freak out, because then they'll be like, oh, was it you who moved it? Was it you who moved it? Was it you who moved it? And everyone would say no. You wouldn't have a chance to actually replicate, because how can you replicate when you've got maybe 4 people around this board who are all freaking out? And then because your brain has then switched to, ooh, there might be something to it, the ideomotor effect is more likely to kick in and will start spelling things out. And that's why I think that rule in particular exists. As for the other rules, they don't say goodbye, and well, no, always say goodbye, and there was another one. I've forgotten it. Oh yeah, not taking your hand off. If you take your hand off, planchette's not going to move. The ideomotor effect can't work if you're not touching it. And they always say goodbye. If you don't say goodbye, again, subconsciously you'll start picking up on things in your everyday life that you wouldn't necessarily always pick up on, until you'll think, oh, hang on a minute, is this the paranormal? And then because you're in that psychological trap, you'll notice it get worse. You'll then think it's the Ouija board because of the spooky mythos created around it. So it's all just a big psychological game. And I think night vision's the same. I think if you are investigating in daylight, nothing will happen. I honestly, well, very, very little will happen. But I think in the dark, you're in a heightened senses environment. So with vision removed, you will hear things you don't necessarily always hear. You will feel things you don't necessarily always feel. Some of these things will be legitimate. Some of these things will not be legitimate. Because as I mentioned in the article, it's far safer for your brain, from an evolutionary standpoint, it's far safer for your brain to feel or see things that are not there, as opposed to not seeing and feeling things when they are there. So your brain has this defense where it will see things or feel things that aren't there, because it's kind of fight or flight response. It wants you to prepare for danger. So if you're in the dark, you need those other senses to be working a little bit better to keep you alive. And so you will see things, you will hear things, you will see things in the dark, you will see shadows, etc. You will hear things, noises that may or may not be there. You may hear footsteps. You may feel as though someone's touched you, because there's all a psychological effect to try and keep you alive. It's not necessarily spirits. Sometimes it could be. Sometimes it's not. You don't know. And this is why you always need a camera and audio equipment, because if you hear something, you need to see if it's backed up through the camera and the audio equipment. Otherwise, it didn't happen. That's how you need to be with it. But this is why night vision is used. It is the equivalent of the ideomotor effect and the Ouija board rules. Because if you're in the dark, not only is it spookier for those watching and it's spookier for the person investigating, but you're more likely to receive false positives, which isn't great. So, yeah. He also says that ghost adventures used the Ovilus, the SLS Spirit Box. You know, they were all popularized through Ghost Adventures, and EMF meters have been around since the 1950s. And that techniques and equipment were all popularized by programs we know have fake things, which is what I was referring to earlier as to if they all fake things, then if that foundation's unstable, does the rest of the tower fall? Which is interesting. So he then asks the question of should paranormal investigations be filmed for YouTube? And he says that you have to make it entertaining for YouTube. And he also asks, are you doing it for cool cinematic shots or to show people your findings? And he also asks, is it about making YouTube videos or is it about paranormal investigation? I think these are all good hypotheticals. I personally think that they should be filmed for YouTube because it does show findings. It shows... If you only had the fake channels and the fake things being like, oh my god, look, it's all real, and portraying it as real, unless you have the real stuff balancing it out, you don't know what is and isn't real. The inflated view is no longer counterbalanced by the real view. The inflated view, the fake view, is suddenly all the way up here, and everyone's expectations of the paranormal are way higher because that's all that they've seen and all that they know. So it's why most haunted back in the day were believed, because there wasn't that counter argument of you don't get all the knocking and banging and stuff. Whereas now, because you've got the counter argument, I think everyone's much more level-headed about paranormal. So I do think it should be filmed for YouTube, definitely while the fake stuff is portraying itself as real. He says he knows the argument is that even though nothing was found, they want to show what they did. That is an argument. It's not the argument that I've posed. But yes, that is an angle that I think is a valid argument. And he does make a good counter-argument to that. He says that if they continue to show nothing happening, then should it be uploaded to YouTube or the internet? And he says that in the realm of scientific discovery, when they discover something, they make some videos of the testing period, but they don't make videos of early style of every single testing period and upload it to YouTube or show it to the scientific community. They put a few tests up and say what they're doing, and then a year or so down the line, they'll release something saying what they found. Which, again, I do agree with what he said there. That is what happens with scientific discovery. They write papers saying what they've found. They'll write papers saying about what they're going to do. They may release a video here or there, but they're not going to do anything at all on the scale of what paranormal investigators do, where they're like, here's all this footage from every night of this place, especially not with nothing coming back from it. Because really with scientific discovery, to my knowledge, if they find something significant, they'll upload that video, and then that prompts other scientists to test it and to confirm it. And they won't release their videos, they'll just be like, yep, we agree, you found the thing. And then the original person, they'll write an article, or they'll write something about it, a research paper or whatever, and then other people write research papers and books, and it's a lot of writing, which is why a lot of what I do is writing, because I'm trying to do it in a scientific way. And then he says, as far as I can tell, only the paranormal field puts out content when nothing happens, as they're being honest, but they do it time and time again with no results or evidence. I was like, yeah, it does. And you could argue, if you're showing more nothing than you're showing something, then does that mean that there is just nothing? Maybe. It definitely shows that 90% of the time you're not going to get activity. But that 10% is in question, isn't it? So it's just interesting. This is the thing about the paranormal. It's always very interesting regarding how much activity you actually get and how much of it can be explained away. Does that mean it doesn't exist at all? Because there are unexplained instances that happen. So it is very interesting. And I personally do believe in the paranormal. But arguments like what he's posed there do make you stop and wonder. They make you stop and think, hang on a minute, is it all just fake? is it all just a false belief? Which is very interesting. And then he reads Dead Cold's post, which I read earlier, and says he doesn't think that Dead Cold should stop what he's doing what he enjoys, but he understands the comment. And he says that the statement is the personification of what he was saying. Take the content creation and entertainment value out of it, and what are you filming a paranormal investigation for if you get no results? Now, I would argue you're filming it just in case you do get a result. So really, he should have phrased it in a way of uploading, not filming. Because you're filming just in case something does happen. But I would also say that you're filming just in case, like if you're investigating an abandoned location, you're filming it just in case you come across another human being. So that way, they are more tempered. Like if you say to them, I'm live streaming, they don't want to get done for a murder on a live stream, you know? So they'll likely not engage in physical violence. Because that's a very real possibility when you're investigating an abandoned location. If you suddenly say, I'm going on filming, or live streaming or whatever, that they're more likely to let you live. So I do think that you should film. It's like the safety in numbers thing, you know. It's like you should always take someone with you if you investigate an abandoned location. And then he's saying that, he's not saying that they shouldn't be made. He finds them entertaining. But if you're doing it for science, then it questions if it should be uploaded, which is, like I say, a better way of phrasing it. Should it be uploaded as opposed to should it be filmed? And he says he thinks it should be filmed just in case something happens. And like I say, that something is not necessarily paranormal, it's also human. And he says that if you're trying to find proof, should it be entertaining? Which I don't think it should. But I mean, I think it can be. I think you can make entertaining videos which show proof. Some of the best educational videos I've seen in school were entertaining. So you could very well make an entertaining paranormal research video and make it, you can make it entertaining. And then he says that you should try to change methods if you want to separate from the fake paranormal, because they've been doing the same things for 20 years. I do think that there needs to be a bit of a freshen up. And he then asks, is it about trying to make entertaining videos, or is it about scientifically trying to prove that ghosts exist? And again, I agree. And I think that's something that people do need to ask themselves about, if it's about making entertaining videos or if it's about trying to prove that ghosts exist. I would specifically ask that question to Elton Castille of the Overnight channel, because I know he has said he wants to make films in the future. So I would say, with your Overnight channel, are you trying to make entertaining videos, or are you trying to make legitimate paranormal investigations? Because like I say, if you make legitimate investigation videos, tone it down. Make it more real. Concern yourself more so not with the entertainment value, but the investigation angle. Trying to capture the best evidence you can. Because a lot of the time, I think there's a bit of shaky cam in his stuff, which, unlike I've said in previous things, if they're shouting and screaming, you're not hearing any other noises that may occur. And those other noises may very well explain the initial noise. So I think that Mr. Gray's response is very good. And I think it addresses a lot of points, and he does have good notes, and it does really question the legitimacy of the paranormal and the legitimacy of investigators, and if they're doing it for legitimate reasons or not. And yeah, that's basically all I have to say now on that, because I've pretty much discussed it all when talking about it. So that's why I had to do an article, because I mean, I was going to do an article anyway, but when I saw his response, I was like, I definitely have to do an article now, because that's a good bit of topic there to discuss. But then I saw another one. I saw another statement. So one of the groups that I follow on Facebook, I'm just going to quickly check the time, 9 o'clock, cool, so I've been streaming for an hour, that's cool. One of the groups I follow on Facebook is the Cornish Ghost Whispers, and I've had a few interactions with them. I would say positive interactions. They've liked a few of my things. So I will acknowledge potential bias when discussing this team. Although there are things that they've posted which I've questioned, not necessarily openly, but I've questioned to myself. Sometimes it's open questioning. But I wouldn't say that I think that they're fake, from what I've seen. I'd say they can publish questionable things to Facebook, but that's what the paranormal is. It's just all questionable, and everyone has their own opinions to it. But they released a statement on the 22nd of August, which I don't know if this was because of Beardo's live stream, but it hits a lot of the same topics that Beardo's live stream hit. And because of the proximity, Beardo's live was on the 14th of August, their statement was on the 22nd of August. So the proximity made me wonder, have they seen that live stream and thought, ooh, that's a good point, I'm going to put out this statement. But as I say, sadly they don't acknowledge that live stream at all. But what they say, or what they said, is, and apologies, it's a bit of a if you want to read, so apologies if I do get hung up on anything in particular. They say, looking forward to starting up Paranormal again. I'm going to be studying paranormal research on a professional level. It's not just going to be lives running around screaming or over-the-top Hollywood stuff to get more famous or whatever media. I would like to find out more into this. That means debunking anything that possible that might not be paranormal. Instead of jumping to conclusions, that is. I want to give you guys the whole truth of the paranormal. I think people need to know what is real and what isn't true phenomena. My museum isn't going to be like others that have that over-the-top hype, but a research project, so I can give you all the best quality of paranormal. After losing my dad, this is what I want to dedicate myself to, finding the truth that everyone on social media deserves. With this museum of ours, I hope you will enjoy watching this live. So that was a very interesting statement, and like I say, it hits a number of topics that Beardo discussed in his live. So with the proximity to it, I've classed this as a response to that live, even though they don't mention it, because it's so similar to the conversation topics. And I say they may not have seen it, they may be purely coincidental, but I still thought it worth mentioning. So, starting from the start, looking forward to starting Paranormal again. That's because they had taken a break. I'm going to be studying Paranormal on a professional level. I don't quite know what that means. I don't quite know what studying paranormal research on a professional level means. Straight away from reading that, you get the indication that they're going to be going to university or something, but I don't think that's it. But, as I've said, there are different levels to paranormal investigation. The first is research. So, ignoring the word professional, I mean, I think that they just mean that they want to do more research and they want to really focus on it, as opposed to professional. So, it's good that they want to do more research. And they say it's not just going to be lives running around screaming or over the top Hollywood stuff to get more famous. I have not seen their live streams, admittedly. I don't know, therefore, if their lives were running around screaming and over the top. I know some of the images, etc. I have questions over when they're saying, look, we've caught this, like a shadow figure. Some of that I've questioned. Some of those I think it looks like zoomed in, fairly poor quality images. But I don't know if they ran around. They never struck me as a group that would run around screaming, doing over the top stuff. Which is, again, it's why they hit points Beardo discusses, and this is one of those points, which is why I think it's a response to it. It's good they're saying they're not doing it to get more famous as well. They'd like to find out more into this. That means debunking anything. Again, another point that was mentioned, debunking, that possibly might not be paranormal. Now, from looking at their posts, it seems like they've become a little more skeptical, because instead of saying, look at this ghost we've caught, they have been saying, it looks like this, what do you think? Or at least they're saying, I think it looks like this, what do you think? And that's good, because you shouldn't, if you capture what looks like a ghost, you shouldn't say this is a ghost, because you don't know for sure. So, granted, I've not seen them debunk anything, but I've not seen them claim that something is a ghost. So, we'll see how that goes. And instead, like, jumping to conclusions, that's a good thing that they've mentioned, because a lot of people do that. they do post videos or images. Orbs are a common one, where they're like, oh, look at this figure that I've caught on a camera. Saw one recently of one of those doorbell camera things, and someone posted this video saying, look what I've caught. It's a big black shadow figure on there. It appeared at 3 a.m, and you can see the footage. And I looked at the footage, and this is another one I left a comment on, where you can see it, and it does look like a shadow figure that is just standing in front of their door. But if you look at it properly, it's a bit of an optical illusion, because I do think it was just a bug that was on the camera. Because if you look at it, on the left side of the shadow figure, you could see a little outline of what could be legs, which kind of emerged and tucked a little, and then the shadow figure kind of moves down and across the screen and grows much smaller as it does that. And I was like, okay, that's a bug, because the legs there have kind of gotten into their position to jump off, and they've then jumped away, which is why it gets smaller. Even though it looks kind of like a shadow figure moving and dissipating, depending on how you look at it. But I was like, no, I'm pretty sure it's a bug, because you can kind of see the outline of the antenna and the legs. And as well, where it looks like antenna they were at the bottom of the figure, and it jumps downwards. So it's not like it's doing a backflip or anything. So the jumping to conclusions is something commonly done. Because the people who posted that footage and people in the comments were very much so like, oh my god, that's amazing, I've caught something like that as well. And very few people were saying it's just a bug, look, you can see the lines, which are its legs and antenna. So, yeah, she then says, want to give you guys the truth of the paranormal. I think people need to know what is real and what isn't true, which I agree. I think that there's a lot of misunderstanding at the moment between real paranormal and fake paranormal. People don't quite know all the time which groups are real, which groups aren't real. Like I've said with myself and Overnight, I don't know if they're real or not. And as Mr. Gray was saying, it's tough to tell sometimes because they're all doing the same things and using the same equipment. So really the only way you can tell is kind of how much stuff is happening. Then they said their museum isn't going to be like the others and not going to have the over-the-top hype, which is cool. I think that haunted museums, there's something I should write about. I should write about different museums, but you can have a lot which are, as she says, over-the-top hype. And that you don't really have a deep dive into questioning, is this a haunted item or is it not a haunted item? Now, granted, I've seen newspapers, so I'm not going to say that it's on them. I know that newspaper companies can take things out of context, they can twist things a little bit. But I have seen about an item in their museum, which is a bone pendant from Aleister Crowley. And it seems like they were kind of doing over-the-top hype with that pendant regarding what it was. And I read the article and I was like, I think there's a psychological angle you could argue here. And that wasn't addressed at all. So hopefully they start addressing psychology a bit more. And they say it's a research project, which I think is the right way of approaching a museum, as opposed to just money making and just collecting random stuff. You need to do it as a research project. Although the best quality of paranormal, you could gather items, maybe make a place a lot more haunted, which they might be referring to there. But yeah, so I think that they say promising things in that statement, which it's good that it seems like it's been influenced by Beardo's live stream. And I always say that in regards to this particular statement, because they don't mention Beardo's live stream, they just seem influenced by it. I could be wrong with that as the assessment there, but they hit a lot of the same points. So it's one of those where I've only seen those 3 responses. There could have been more. And so that's why I wanted to cover the Beardo live stream, because if you've had those 3 responses, just imagine how many more channels have looked at his live stream, listened to it, taken it in, and been like, you know what, you've got a point, I'm going to change what I'm doing. And same goes for Mr. Gray's video, same goes for the Cornish Ghost Whisperers statement, same goes for Dead Cold statement. People will look at that, and it's the snowball effect. It starts from one thing, and then it stems out, and becomes bigger and bigger as it rolls along, and hopefully that live stream has had an effect on a number of people. Hopefully it will continue to have an effect on a number of people, and as a result, hopefully it just makes everyone a little bit more skeptical, a little bit more honest, makes them think more about what they're doing and how they're doing it. And that's, again, why I wanted to do the articles, because I wanted to make that live stream more discoverable, which I think it is a bit more discoverable on the database. Hopefully it stays that way. It's definitely had a number of views, so that it's good. It's good. So yeah, so that's pretty much all I have to say on that topic. So thank you everyone for watching. I hope that you found the video interesting, and yeah, that's it now for Beardo's live stream. That is all the parts. So I will not discuss it again. The next live stream, next Wednesday, I will discuss the gin. Hopefully. I am in the process of writing that article for this Friday, so it should be the article for next Wednesday. I don't quite know how it'll go, because it's interesting in terms of, yeah, I don't know how I'm going to write it either, because it's different from, location articles. It's not quite a chronological order type thing. It's just a lot of facts. So we'll see how that goes, and like I said, I will hopefully be discussing that next Wednesday on a live stream on Facebook from 8 o'clock. So I hope you've enjoyed, and I hope that you've seen the article snippet as well that I released across social media earlier on today. It was about, if I can remember how you pronounce it, Clan Kayak Vower Manor, I think is how you pronounce it. It's something like Clan Kayak, because making the TikTok video for it, it was a hassle, because I have the automated voiceover thing which reads out stuff. Trying to get it to accurately pronounce the name of that place, I had to literally write it, I think, as Clan and then Kayak, and then what was it? It was like Vow R or Var R, something like that. It was weird. And then trying to get it to pronounce the actual place. I can't remember the place where it's within, the town or village or whatever. I can't remember what it's called, but that was a hassle as well. But thank you everyone for watching, and I hope that you've been enjoying the articles, and that and hopefully you'll be here next week as well. So yeah, goodbye.